This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for September 17th, 10 a.m. Yesterday, Maria made landfall on the Avalon Peninsula in southeastern Newfoundland, and the system was becoming extratropical as it moved through. Let's go ahead and put this in motion and see what happened here during the day yesterday. Around 2 p.m., the system was downgraded to tropical and possibly extratropical storm right at this point when it was right near St. John's, Newfoundland. Now, that's our current feature at Hurricane City, and if you go and look at the news feeds from the area, there's very minimal damage. In fact, I think the highest wind gust recorded out there was around 60 miles per hour. Very minimal damage. A lot of the areas that were affected by Igor from last year didn't even have any tree branches knocked off trees or anything. So, I mean, most of the high winds were out over the water. You can see here 58, 60 mile an hour winds over water. And then back here, you're only talking about 45 mile an hour winds over land from the northeast. So the system was moving very quickly as it went off to the northeast, and most of the winds were out on the right front quadrant. So the winds were very light. Well, not light, but they were not as strong as what was expected in the Avalon Peninsula. So this will be considered as a extratropical storm hit for St. John's, Newfoundland. Well, now, St. Pierre over here will not be considered as affected by the system because it did pass off to the east without affecting them at all. So St. John's will crack the list as a tropical storm hit, extratropical storm hit for this year. And that's the first time the Canadians have been affected this hurricane season. Of course, the system raced on off to the northeast and moved out into the open Atlantic. So let's see how the models performed on this system overall. Now, I remember showing you this image. Let me pan this out. I remember showing you this image when Maria was right northeast of Puerto Rico. And this was the GFDN model, which is the Navy's version of the GFDL model. And it clearly showed it almost went identical to what this model said was going to happen. The system even jogged a little bit off to the west for a little while and then went north. And then went just west of Bermuda by about 100 miles and went right up. So this model nailed it, the GFDN model. I know the No Gaps and the Navy's been taking a hit on their models lately for accuracy, but this particular model did a really good job on Tropical Storm Maria, which became Hurricane Maria right here, which is west of Bermuda. All right, now how did the models overall perform on this system? Let's go ahead and zoom in on them and take a look at how the models did day by day on this system. Here we were out there when Maria was well east of the Leeward Islands, and the only models that really nailed the exact track on this was the GFS, the GFDL model, the European model, and of course the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. The H-WRF was down here to the south. The BAM models were a little bit off to the north, but the other models nailed it pretty good. Now, if we go down a little bit further south, the European went out of control over here. It had it way over here near the East Coast, which never happened, whereas the GFS and the BAM models pretty much had it right, that it was going to turn northwest at that point. And then we go out to Friday, and this was from September 9th. This was about a week ago. And Maria was still east of the Leeward Islands, and the models were tightly clustered over the northeastern Caribbean Sea. But look at this, the UK Met pretty much nailed the turn to the north real early on. The other models were out here a little bit closer to the Bahamas. So the UK Met did good once it was right near the Leeward Islands, and then you go out even further, and the models got in a better agreement here about a turn to the north. And it looks like the GFS pretty much nailed it out of this group. So overall, the GFS did really well on this system, probably better than the other models as far as the mainstream global models are concerned. As far as the overall hurricane season, I'd have to give highest marks to the GFS. And then the European model's done pretty well, but the European model this year, I've noticed it's been a lot of wild swings in the early runs of the European model. From day to day, some days it has it going way one direction, and then the next day it has it going way the other direction. But the GFS has been pretty consistent of a model, and the BAM models have done pretty well this year too. So we'll pay attention to those the rest of the hurricane season. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on out there in the Atlantic right now. Let's take a look at the water vapor loop of the entire Atlantic basin, and you can see we have a big upper level low right there smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic basin. And boy, look at the mouth on this thing. My God, this thing is a hurricane muncher. Look at the mouth on that. Look at that. I'm going to eat all those hurricanes, and all these hurricane fanatics are going to have nothing to talk about. I'm just going to sit out here and eat everything, because that's what it's going to do. Anything that comes into this area here is going to be gobbled up. Now, we do have a new Invest 97L way out in the East Atlantic, and that's supposed to, most of the general model thinking is generally west to west, northwest towards the northern Leeward Islands or the Windward Islands. In fact, the GFS has something down here in about by the end of next week, which is pretty far south. Now, by then, I would imagine that this upper level low will be kicked on out. It's not going to sit here as a stationary feature for a week, although it's possible, but unlikely. So this might have the window here to get into the Caribbean Sea. And, again, I've noticed on the front page of Hurricane City, I put a link to all the past hurricanes that were way out in the Atlantic this time of the year and made it all the way across and affected the United States. So it's a little bit early to make a call and say that there's nothing that can make it all the way across to the United States. There's quite a hurricane history of that, and that's true even going into next week. There's quite a hurricane history of systems that have made it all the way across from Africa. So we need to watch 97L closely. This named storm would become Ophelia, and we'll see what happens. All right, now what's the shear looking like out there right now? Well, we have that big upper level low I just showed you. But out here in the Atlantic, if this stays far south like the GFS is showing, it would avoid most of the high wind shear out here in the Atlantic. And there's higher shear out here around 30 knots of shear up around 20 north. So if it stays south of, say, 15 north, it should be okay making its way across. If it gets up and around 15, 16 north, it's going to have some problems with wind shear. And in fact, some of the models, the tropical models, are reluctant to develop this system into much of anything. That includes the GFDL and the HWRF models are really timid on development. Although the FHIP model, the tropical model, does show that there's two systems that are going to come off Africa. They're going to do a little Fujiwara, which is one system wrapping around the other one, and then eventually it'll continue west across the Atlantic toward the Leeward Islands. So we're going to watch this closely. The models are up at Hurricane City. We'll see what happens. All right, now, did a little inventory at Hurricane City so far this hurricane season, and talked about all of the cities and islands that have been impacted. About 46 of the 153 cities at the Hurricane City database have been impacted by named storms this year, 20 of them by Hurricane Irene, which moved up the East Coast. There's a whole bunch of cities up and down the East Coast, so the numbers are a little bit skewed, but by the end of last hurricane season, we had 19 named storms and we had less land impacts than we do right now this hurricane season. So this is a very active impact season for landfalls, even though they've been pretty relatively weak systems. We haven't had any major landfalls or anything. We had one hurricane, and you could argue on Maria whether it was a hurricane when it hit Newfoundland, but for the most part, the system was a extratropical storm up that direction, as the wind observations would indicate. But basically, tropical storms. This is the year of the tropical storm. Very large, broad circulations with tropical storms for the most part. Now, here are all my yellow highlighted areas that I picked on June 1st. We had Grand Bahama Island, brushed by Irene. Great Exuma, Bahama, Hurricane Irene pounded them. And Belize was affected by Tropical Storm Harvey. In my moderate threat category, Eleuthera Island was hit by Irene. Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico was brushed by Irene as it passed just northeast of there. And then Tampico, Mexico was affected by Tropical Storm Arlene, the first named storm of the season. Now, all these other cities out here, most of them are South Florida locations. So if South Florida gets affected, this would be the first year that I pretty much can knock every name off the list. Halifax came close up here with Maria. And, of course, we also have the Cayman Islands here in the top 20. And the Cayman Islands always get affected later in the season. So we got to see what happens here. This can end up being a very good year. Now, if South Florida does not get impacted by any named storms, I will be wearing the chicken suit right here in the studio on the end of season broadcast, so tune in for that. Anyway, that's about it for now. We'll watch Invest 97L, watch it at Hurricane City, and get the latest wrap-ups on Hurricane Maria from Newfoundland, and that'll be about it. We'll be back in another couple days once we know if we have a named storm out in the Atlantic. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.